Welcome back. Still with me, Brian Pruitt, TJ Helmstetter, and Horace Cooper. Let's get back to it. The FDA ruled on Tuesday that it no longer considers trans fats as generally recognized as safe, or GRAS, and gave the food industry 3 years to eliminate trans fats from America's food supply. That effort is estimated to cost $6 billion to industry to put into effect. But it's expected to save about $7 billion per year in health care and other costs, for a total of about $140 billion in savings over the next 20 years. More importantly, this regulation will save lives. The FDA estimates that banning artificial trans fats could prevent 20,000 heart attacks and 7,000 deaths from heart disease every year. It saves money, it saves lives. Can't we all agree this is a great government regulation?
One would hope. One would hope we could all agree on this, Tom.
This is the perfect example of the president continuing to lead from behind. Private companies have already started doing this in response to customer demand. And so now the president comes in through his regulatory regulation making authority and says, wow, private sector has already come up with a great idea. Let's now make everybody else do it.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, the president doesn't control the FDA. It's an independent agency. Okay. But secondly, this is an example of government taking about 30 years to catch up with science. Okay, we've known that trans fats kill people for 20 to 30 years now, and it's taken the government this long to say enough is enough.
It was Republican Bloomberg, though, who started this regulation. I mean, New York City banned trans fats in restaurants, and long before this.
I refer to him as,
that started industry saying, okay, we want to sell in New York City.
I refer to him as bully billionaire, not Republican Bloomberg.
He is a Republican.
Maybe.
But he was also a good public health mayor. He did great things on smoking and trans fats, tried to get soda out of schools. But the fact is, like you said, this will save 20,000 heart attacks a year, 7,000 lives a year. One would hope that we could all agree on this. The fact is, this is not about consumer choice. It's not like I can't go and buy my Twinkies and my Ho-Hos if I want to. It just means that that company needs to use palm oil instead of this partially hydrogenated.
Right. The fact of the matter is,
you minimize the cost, and you minimize who was targeted.
Trans fats are artificially created.
It doesn't matter whether they're artificially created or not.
You take fat, heat it up to 790 degrees, bubble hydrogen through it, and now you got trans fats. That's not something our bodies evolved to
I don't care.
respond to.
It's a free product. It's a product that people are freely should be allowed to pick if they want.
Poison.
If they would like to have them. You're for marijuana legalization, and that's poison. But that does not get us.
I think that the average consumer is not looking for partially hydrogenated chemicals, whatever it is.
Put both products.
They're looking for healthy, delicious food, and companies.
And that's a lie.
Companies have the ability to use products that don't kill people.
You know how I know that's a lie? If you put the products side by side and let people pick, you'd be upset at how many people would pick the one product over the other.
Not if they taste the same and one kills you and one doesn't.
And there's a reason for that, Horace, and that is that many people what these trans fats.
It's up to you, progressives,
no,
to do
it's not. It's not that. It's that these trans fats extend shelf life, and so they reduce the cost of the products. And so a lot of people who are low-income folks are eating these products that are made with trans fats and dying as a result of it.
Tom, here's the story that no one's talking about, and that is that this change was already happening, but what the president and the FDA did was pick a fight by trying to mandate it. So what we have is a problem that is already being solved, a problem that's already being solved, being turned into an artificial controversy by this administration.
The companies didn't start eliminating the trans fats because they just thought it was a good thing to do. They did it because they saw these regulations coming down the line. Cities like New York and other big cities like them had already started, and they understood that this was coming. So yes, some companies were smart enough to already start eliminating trans fats, and now the rest have to catch up.
No, there are some consumers
want to poison themselves.
The other products that don't have these ingredients in them, and people were responding to that. And as Josh Earnest said, when they took credit for the private choice that the FDA does, that the president doesn't control, when he took credit for this, he said it was time for this to be mandated. But the problem isn't that. The problem is that you're targeting an industry and making them bear all of the costs while we claim to spread out the benefits.
An industry that has not paid any of the costs of all the heart attacks.
That's how you kill jobs.
And that's what you do. That's how you kill jobs. That's how you save lives. This industry has been killing people, and they're not paying for it.
That's why you have these.
We're not even asking them to pay for it. We're simply saying stop killing people.
Yes, you are. You're absolutely imposing. It's a $6 billion.
Speaking of killing people, the Vatican will release the first papal encyclical on climate change this week, and a leaked copy spells bad news for presidential candidates who happen to be Republican and Catholic. Take a look at Jeb Bush as Jeb Bush tries to separate personal religion, he's Catholic, and public leadership.
I hope I'm not going to get castigated for saying this by my priest back home, but I don't get economic policy from my bishops or my cardinals or from my pope, and I'd like to see what he says as it relates to climate change and how that connects to these broader, deeper issues before I pass judgment. But I think religion ought to be about making us better as people and less about things that end up getting into the political realm. So I'm a little skeptical about this.
Compare that to what he said in 2009. As a public leader, Jeb Bush said, one's faith should guide you. In the United States, many people think you need to keep your faith, put it in a security box if you're an elected official. Put it in a safety deposit box until you finish your service as a public servant, and then you can go get it back. I never thought that was appropriate. But Jeb's not the only cafeteria Catholic who's running for the nomination. Rick Santorum, Bobby Jindal, Marco Rubio all deny climate change while claiming to be Catholic. So how long are these candidates going to be able to walk this tightrope between their pope and claiming to be good, God-fearing Americans?
I think it's interesting that, Jeb Bush cites his Catholic faith when he's saying who I can or can't marry or what women can do with their bodies.
Or Terry Schiavo.
Right. But, when it comes to climate change, well, we better not listen to the Pope because ExxonMobil gives me money and I need them to be happy.
Right. And climate change is killing people.
I'll make a trade with you, Tom. You embrace the Pope's policies on family, abortion, and gay marriage, and I'll embrace your crazy ideas and those of the Pope's on the environment. How's that? No, you won't make that trade because you want to be a cafeteria.
Well, are either of you Catholic?
I am not
grew up Catholic, and I think that this Pope is being very consistent in putting the needs of the poor first, which is what I was taught as a Catholic. And the fact is that poor people are disproportionately impacted by climate change, and it is up to the wealthy to stop it.
Poor people are disproportionately impacted by climate change regulation policies. They're overwhelmingly going to be the front line of those harmed by these policies. But the point is,
rich people are the ones who are getting $5.3 trillion a year in subsidies. The oil industry worldwide.
I haven't heard from a pope yet who's in favor of the death penalty, and yet all of these Catholic elected leaders who happen to be Republican are all invariably in favor of the death penalty, and it has caused them no problem.
That's not entirely true.
Who has it caused a problem for?
The Pope is a moral leader, and it's very hard, I think, what some people are trying to do on the left is turn the Pope into sort of a policy wonk.
The first chapter of Genesis says we should be stewards of the earth.
Absolutely. Well, there's different ways
in that same chapter he created man and woman.
Right. So there's
the concept of marriage.
There's that particular part of Genesis has been interpreted in different ways. I think we can all come to a consensus that what's called for is stewardship, but that is achieved in different ways. And I think what you're going to hear the Pope say is that we have to take care of the earth. I think it's incumbent on Republicans and Democrats alike to not only come up with solutions, but also not blame America first. I think what happened when people...
blaming America?
I am. I'm blaming America and other industrialized countries.
There you go.
Because we are the nations, the wealthy nations of the world, are the ones that are polluting the world and destroying it for the poorer countries of the world. Like, look at Indonesia, which is basically, its citizens are going to be drowning because countries like the U.S. keep polluting.
Democrats hear that the Pope is going to issue an encyclical on climate change, and all they see are dollar signs. All they see are fines. All they see are more taxes on rich companies. That's all they see. They don't see the leader.
He's a Democrat.
Democrats.
Oh, well, I'm a Democrat, and what I see is saved
progressive.
lives and cleaner air. And the fact is
bigger
that ExxonMobil
fines,
should
more-
be ashamed of itself because it paid over $700,000 to a group putting out press releases attacking this Pope. And yes, there was someone in the Vatican who leaked this encyclical a few days early. So actually, we already know what it says, and we know that it will say that man has helped create climate change and that it's man's responsibility to end it.
Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, House Republicans proposed a budget this week that would eliminate funding for the Title X program. Title X is a program created by Richard Nixon to ensure that family planning providers could offer birth control, cancer screenings, STD testing, and reproductive health treatment to millions of low-income women. Nixon declared it at the time. He said, "It is my view that no American woman should be denied access to family planning assistance because of her economic condition." House Republicans tried to dismantle Title X, Title X, in 2011, but that proposal couldn't pass because Democrats still controlled the Senate. But with a Republican-controlled Senate, it's much more likely that this is going to make it to the Congress's final budget. So why do Republicans want to cut a women's health program that was created and championed by Republican President Richard Nixon?
This
I mean,
problem will
you're
go
all in
away.
favor of Nixon's fast track. He invented that, too.
This problem will go away if Planned Parenthood and the other abortuary operators decide that they're no longer going to do that, and they'll just stick to STD testing, they'll stick to cervical screenings and the like, and then you won't have this problem.
this
The
funding-
problem is that we are funding abortion mills all across this country, and Americans, including non-Americans like the
you ever
Pope,
heard of the Hyde
don't
Amendment?
support them.
Okay, this funding
Absolutely,
has
they
nothing to do with
pretend.
abortion. And in fact, this is incredibly hypocritical of Republicans to oppose this funding because actually what we know is that when women and girls are educated and when women and girls have access to contraception and sex education, that the rate of abortion goes down, not up. So if Republicans are serious about being quote-unquote pro-life, they will support increased funding for women's health, not decreased.
Brian, last word.
I think this is all about abortion absolutism. And I think there is a compromise to be had, but it does have everything to do with eliminating, absolutely eliminating funding in any way, even sort of getting around it indirect ways of funding, publicly funding abortion.
Is this about putting Planned Parenthood out of business because they're nonprofit so that a for-profit company can come in and replace them or something? I mean, I'm trying to think like a Republican.
What's wrong with sticking to cancer screening? What's wrong with mammograms? Planned Parenthood
That's the
has
vast majority of what they do.
That is not what Planned Parenthood does. They
just show a
refer
graphic of it.
They refer you to other companies because they're so busy making space for the abortion mills.
This is
And what's
what
wrong
Planned.
with birth
Look at
control
the screen.
pills and pap smears?
Look at the
just
screen right
said
there, Horace.
if
That's what Planned Parenthood. That's the breakdown of what they provide.
You look at the Library of Congress and the assessment that they
We're out
did,
of
and you'll
time.
see that that's not true.
Brian Pruitt, T.J. Helmstetter, Horace Cooper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up.